Sangye Chodam Tsoke Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Jinso Gipe Sonamki Drola Penchira Sangye Druparash Sangye Chodam Tsoke Chonamla Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Chushe Sanamgi Drola Penchira Sangye Druparish Sangye Chodam Tsoki Chana Chanchu Pardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Chushe Gipe Sanamki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparashu. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, I was reflecting a little bit now before we start this session, and one thing that I really like of Buddhist philosophy is that any subject that we go to study, it is connected to almost all other subjects. They're always connected. Like we're talking here about correct view of reality, it's connected to bodhicitta, it's connected to renunciation, it's connected to dealing with our emotions, it's connected to so many things. But the point, and also if we take each and every subject, we can go very deep into it also. No, that's why it said the teachings of Buddha said to be like an ocean that is vast and deep and connected within it also. No? But here, I was reflecting a little bit now in the beginning, we need to choose which door we want to open because we are in a subject that is a sort of a corridor and we have so many doors around that we can go through out of this. From what we have seen before on conventional reality and so on, there is a part related to how to deal with our emotions in relation to that. There is another part which is the relation, how to purify the karma. We can look from that perspective. We can look at the perspective, what is a Buddha? We can look from so many doors we can open here. But if we start opening many, many doors, we are going to get a little bit confused. So I think we need first to conclude well the one that we already opened. And then slowly we can go opening other doors. But today, the time that we have, we need to use it in a way to conclude this. Because this is a very broad subject. It's a subject that's very wide. Once we open it, it connects to so many things. So we will have the possibility to open other doors. But at this moment, we need to first we open it, we close. Otherwise, if we open every door, we just give a look inside and we close again. After, it's very difficult for us to really have a conclusion. So what we will see now, then if we have more time, we can look at other aspects also. But what we will see now is we will conclude about conventional reality. Then we will understand a little bit about what it is actually the understanding of ultimate reality. And then from that we will look, how this knowledge is useful in our own development. And from that we understand what is a Buddha and what is enlightenment and so on. Okay? Perciò, and also we will conclude the text of Panchasampotashi. We still need to read the last part, okay? Let's first of all, we need to conclude the part of understanding relative truth and absolute truth, okay? So as we saw, relative truth is the way how phenomena do exist, okay? So it's basically through interdependence. How do phenomena exist? as being cause and conditions, as parts and the whole, as the base of imputation and the imputation of the name, okay? Making it simple. This is how phenomena do exist. So things do exist, but they are depending on what? On cause and conditions, on their own parts, and on the base of imputation and the imputation of the name. So this is actually how phenomena do exist. Then, and it's what is called conventional truth, relative truth, okay? Then we go to the next point, which is the ultimate truth, absolute reality, ultimate reality. Making it simple somehow, we could say that the absolute truth is that nothing exists in an absolute level, an absolute way. The ultimate truth is that nothing exists ultimately. The ultimate truth is that everything is conventional. Okay? So when we really go to look, there is no difference really between ultimate truth and relative truth, or conventional and relative. Actually, we are talking exactly about the same thing. No? And that's where we come to the verse of the Guru Puja. On the verse number 108, Korderanshin dudsa mebadan gyuretende lua mebani pensu galme troksu charwai ludrugonton topar jingilo. Samsara and Nirvana lack even an atom of true existence. When we talk here, Samsara and Nirvana means everything that is impure and pure. Okay? Samsara means everything that is impure, that is in the middle of suffering, and so on. Nirvana is everything that is beyond suffering. Lack even an atom of true existence. True existence here doesn't mean that Samsara and Nirvana do not exist. When we talk about true existence, we refer to inherent, intrinsic existence, something that exists as out of its own characteristics, as it appears to us. Okay? So, at the same time, Samsara and Nirvana, they lack even an atom of true existence. Nothing exists from its own characteristics. At the same time, cause and effect and dependent arising, which means interdependence, the different levels of interdependence, are unfailing. Which means at the same time, everything lacks inherent existence and is also interdependent. Okay? So, the glass, at the same time that is empty of inherent existence, it can hold water. It can do functions. It has causes and conditions. Okay? The glass does exist. But at the same time, it also is empty of inherent existence. So Samsara and Nirvana lack even an atom of true existence, while cause and effect and dependent arising are unfailing. We seek your blessings to discern the import of Nagarjuna's thought, which is that these two, what two? The lack of inherent existence, ultimate truth, and interdependence, conventional truth, these two are complementary and not contradictory. So, why is the glass empty of inherent existence? Because it is interdependent. Why is it interdependent? Because it lacks inherent existence. They are complementary. You cannot have one without the other. Now, interdependence and lack of inherent existence, are they both the same thing or they are two different things? Actually, they are two different things of the same nature. One cannot exist without the other. Okay? But there are two different aspects. Okay? So, when we talk about ultimate truth, as we saw before in the definition, I said that ultimate truth is something that is exactly the same for all phenomena. We gave the example, is something that if we go to look, we will find it in the glass, in the microphone, in my hair, in my emotions, in whatever. When we analyze, we'll find exactly the same result. And the only thing, that's what Buddha taught, and I myself have analyzed as much as I couldn't find anything else. The only thing that exists exactly in the same way for all phenomena is actually the lack of inherent existence. The glass lacks inherent existence, the microphone lacks inherent existence, my feelings lack inherent existence, I myself lack inherent existence, and like this we can go on and on and on. The point is that what finally, when I analyze, is the glass of inherent existence or not, and I get to the conclusion the glass lacks inherent existence, what is the result that I get? Emptiness. What is emptiness? We call in Tibetan gakcha kaksam gimega, the simple non-existence of the object of negation. The object of negation in this case is inherent existence. So, when I go and I analyze, is the glass of inherent existence or not, and I finally get to the conclusion the glass lacks inherent existence, my conclusion is the simple lack of inherent existence. When I go to analyze the flower and I get to the result the flower lacks inherent existence, what is the result? The simple lack of inherent existence. Which means, in other words, when I analyze the lack of inherent existence of the glass and I reach, yes, the glass lacks inherent existence, at that moment there is no more glass in the perception. There is only the lack of inherent existence. That's the conclusion. Okay? But if I go to analyze, for example, interdependence, are all phenomena interdependent? Yes. But is the interdependence of all phenomena the same or they are different? For example, when I look at the interdependence of the glass and the interdependence of the flower, they're different because the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name are different. Their parts are different and so on. So, based on that, what happens? The only phenomena that is the same for everything is the lack of inherent existence. So, what is finally ultimate true? The fact that all phenomena lack an ultimate truth somehow. The fact that nothing exists ultimately. This is to be more correct. I could say ultimate truth is the fact that nothing exists ultimately. Absolute truth is that nothing exists absolutely, in an absolute way. Okay? If we use another words, we could say the objective truth is that nothing exists objectively. Everything is convention, everything is subjective. Okay? So, it looks quite simple, but it's really amazing. Because our tendency is to try to put our absolute somewhere, Sometimes people are silly, some people, yes, everything's okay, but in the absolute level, And I'm wondering, what do you mean by absolute level? Sometimes I get a little bit, funny, like, okay, okay. I come from an education, the way how I was educated in the monastery, where words have meaning. No? Where when I say something, I mean something. And it should be quite clear what I try to mean somehow. And sometimes we see, okay, no, everything is absolute, but what do you mean by absolute? I don't know what I mean, but it is, And then it's nothing. But the point is that when we talk about the absolute, which do exist, what is the absolute level? That nothing exists in an absolute way. That everything is interdependent. Okay? And for me personally, this is one of the most beautiful things we can see. But someone may ask me, correctly, but why do we need all of this thing about emptiness and the lack of inherent existence? Wouldn't it be enough just to say that everything is interdependent? If they are complementary, wouldn't it be easier just to talk about interdependence? And just say, look, everything is interdependent. Just get that point. In a way, yes, but actually no. It's not enough. Why? Why is there so much emphasis given on emptiness, on the lack of inherent existence? All of this comes from one very simple fact of our mind. In the nature of our mind, we are totally unable to have two different thoughts, two directly opposite thoughts, contradictory thoughts at the same time. No? I cannot think at the same time I like water and I don't like water. I can think the water has a good taste but a bad smell. The water has a nice temperature but whatever, but we cannot think at the same time I like water and I don't like water. I can think just afterwards. And we are a little bit strange sometimes. So I can say, I like, I don't like, I like, I don't like, I like, I don't like. We can do that. But at the same instant, we cannot think about both together. We are not able to have two directly opposite, directly contradictory apprehensions at the same time. Okay? So, this is one very important key. So if there is a mental attitude that we want to eliminate, what we need to do? Generate a mind that is directly opposite to the mind that we want to generate, that we want to eliminate. That's the only way, really. Okay? So now, just one bracket. When I talk about generate a mind, we are not talking about only conceptual aspects, also more emotional and deeper aspects. If there is something emotional that I want to change, I need to have a direct opposite experience in order to start changing that attitude also. Okay? So, with this in mind, we need to understand one thing, first of all. That is, how suffering is being generated. Where is suffering coming from? Because after that, we are all about not wanting to suffer. All that we are talking here, it finally ends everything in how to eliminate suffering and generate a state of well-being for ourselves and others. So where is actually suffering coming from? Okay, let's just do this briefly. In the beginning, we may think that suffering is coming from external conditions. One person is doing one thing, the other person is doing another thing, this is happening here, that is happening, that, blah, 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 blah. When we go to analyze it, we will see finally that suffering is not coming from external conditions, but from internal conditions. It's not in the way how the world is, but the way how I experience the world, even because all the external conditions that we see as causing suffering, they're all generated by internal situations. If we look at war, at famine, at so many things, finally, where everything goes through? Selfishness, anger, pride, miserliness, ignorance. We can look at all of the conflicts that we know. There are some natural disasters that we could say is a little bit different. But if we analyze it deeply, it also comes from karma. So also again there. But what we will see is that even in a more very gross level, we do so much to eliminate conflicts in the world, and we try in so many different ways. What would be the main thing that we need to change in order to eliminate conflicts? Selfishness of people. If there will be no more selfishness, if there will be real love and compassion and understanding and respect, 99% of the world's problem will be gone. Okay? But the point that I want to get here is that looking at our own lives, if we analyze it well, we will see that our suffering is not coming from the external conditions, but is coming from our internal aspects such as anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, envy, fear, and so on. Okay? What is called our mental defilements or destructive emotions, and so on. Okay? So we will see that our suffering is coming from our mental defilements. Where are our mental defilements coming from? Okay. Basically, we have two attitudes. There is the attitude of attraction and the attitude of aversion. So what we try to do constantly is, whenever we get in touch with something that we see as a cause of suffering, we want to avoid it. Whenever we get in touch with something that we see as a cause of pleasure, we want to get it for us and not to be separated from it. Okay? So what happens from that? From attraction, we develop attachment, desire, and so on. From aversion, we develop anger, hatred, and like this we go on. So, basically, all the mental defilements such as fear, basically fear is based on what? It's on the fear of suffering. We don't want to suffer. So whenever we connect something with suffering, we want to avoid it. Even though we are not sure if it's going to happen or not, we're already trying to avoid it. And finally, for the fear of suffering, we suffer even much more than the actual suffering, Many, many times, the suffering of fear is much higher than the actual thing. But why of this? Because we are obsessed with our own happiness. We are obsessed with the I and the my. This is called selfishness. Selfishness is the obsession with self-gratitude. not gratitude, gratification, sorry, with self-gratification. So, what happened is that, why do we have this obsession with self-gratification, the I and the my, the I and the my? We're a little bit boring in this way, but that's how we are. Always thinking about I and my, I and my, I and my. And then, on the other side, we have this together with this. We look at the world as if we have nothing to do with it, as we are completely separated from it. And whenever there is something that I think that is good for me, I want to grab it and I want to let it go. And whenever there is something that I feel is bad for me, I want to put it away and for whatever means I have. Okay? So, these attitudes, if we look, the attraction and the aversion to the objects that we recognize as causes of suffering and of pleasure, they come from an attitude in which we see them as if they were totally intrinsically existent, totally autonomous, not interdependent. Totally not depending on what I think, on how I feel, of my own interaction with the object, not depending on cause and conditions, they are there. So this is good, so I need it. It's very interesting because out of an attitude of independence, we create a very strong dependence. We see ourselves independent of everything else, everything independently of us, and out of that we create a dependence. Whenever there is something that I see as a cause of suffering, I want to avoid it. Whenever there is something that I see as a cause of pleasure, I want to get it for myself. With that same attitude, we also see ourselves as being totally disconnected with the rest of the universe, with the rest of existence. I am here, I have nothing to do with all the rest has nothing to do with me. We are totally separated. And out of this attitude of seeing ourselves completely separated from everything else in a non-interdependent way, we generate this so-called selfishness. So finally, where is selfishness and the attitude of attraction and aversion that goes together with it coming from? It's coming from the grasping at inherent existence of the self and of phenomena, which means I see myself as existing independently of everything else, and I see the phenomena around me existing independently of everything else also. Okay? So out of this attitude, we generate selfishness, and then we generate attraction and aversion, and then anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, fear, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So finally, who we need to eliminate? The ignorance that grasps at inherent existence of the self and then inherent existence of phenomena. So, how to do that? Let's imagine in this way. Ignorance is the root of all suffering. But let's imagine as an army that we need to fight. Okay? We have all the soldiers, which are all our negative attitudes and our negative behaviors and habits, our bad habits and so on. Then there are mainly 6 main generals, which are the 6 most strong mental defilements, such as attachment, desire, hatred, fear and doubt, our arrogance, and so on. Okay? Then wrong views and ignorance. These are the 6 main generals. Then, above these generals, there is one big boss. Before the big boss, there is the main general, which is called selfishness. And above selfishness, there is the boss of selfishness, which is hidden, Like in most wars, there is always someone showing off and there is someone behind which is really giving the orders that nobody really knows who is. There is someone behind very often not really showing who is the real reason for things. Who is hiding behind selfishness but is giving all the orders to selfishness is ignorance. So the main cause of suffering is selfishness, but the root of suffering is ignorance. What is ignorance? The ignorance of grasping at the inherent existence of self and phenomena. So, to eliminate completely all this negative cycle, we need to eliminate the root, which is ignorance. But to reach there, I need to go through the soldiers. I need to go through the generals. I need to go to the main general, and finally I can get there. So we need to deal with anger? Yes. We need to deal with jealousy, with pride, with mindfulness. There are many methods to do that. We need to deal with selfishness? Yes. For example, by practicing Tonglen. There are many different ways to do all of this. But the ultimate goal is we need to eliminate the big boss, which is ignorance. Otherwise, I can fight a lot against all my negative habits and so on. Then I die, and when I get reborn, they are once again come up, Sure, they are weaker. It's not that we all the lives they come back in the same way. But if I do not eliminate the main cause, I can eliminate many times the oldest soldiers, then after some time they get new soldiers again, and then I'm going again. So for that reason, we need to eliminate the main one. But while we are preparing ourselves to eliminate the main cause, we still need to fight the others. We still need to deal with anger, with jealousy, with pride, with misery. We need to accumulate merits. We need to do so many things in between also. Okay? So it's not that these things are negative. We don't need to do that. We just need to think about emptiness. It's not like this. That's why we have the 6 perfections. We need generosity, we need morality, we need patience, we need joyful effort, we need concentration, and finally we need wisdom. Okay? So, how do I eliminate ignorance? By generating a mind that is directly contradictory to ignorance. What's the mode of apprehension of ignorance? To grasp at inherent existence. So what's ignorance in relation to the glass? I look at a glass, we look to it right now. How does that glass look to us? As something that is interdependent, depending on cause and conditions, on the imputation of the name that I'm giving to it, blah, 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 or it simply exists by its own characteristics, by itself like this. We see it existing inherently, by itself. It appears to us in this way and we believe in it. That's our ignorance. How can I eliminate that mind? By generating the mind, the glass lacks inherent existence. To say the glass is interdependent, it's very beautiful and very important, but it's not enough to eliminate this mind. Because interdependence is not a direct opposite mode of apprehension of the grasping at inherent existence. Our ignorance is not the mind that says phenomena are not interdependent. Our ignorance is the mind that says phenomena are of inherent existence. So what is the direct opposite mind to that? Phenomena are not of inherent existence. They lack inherent existence. So that's why we talk so much about emptiness, about the lack of inherent existence. Because that's the direct opposite mode of apprehension of ignorance. And it's by only familiarizing ourselves with it deeply and deeply and deeply that we can actually change that state of mind. Okay? So here we understand a little bit better about ultimate truth, relative truth. They are complementary. And why we need ultimate truth? Because by that we can change our mode of apprehension. Okay? Well, now let's see a little bit how. What's the process of doing that? Once we see the process of actually eliminating ignorance, that we generate a direct opposite mode of apprehension of ignorance, there is another problem that comes out. Okay, we have another difficulty. Let's say like this. That ignorance is not conceptual only. Once we understand the lack of inherent existence, and we understand that conventional reality is conventional, and we can understand all of this, is wonderful and beautiful. And this makes me remember one verse. I don't remember exactly who was saying that in some sutra, but it says like this. In the moment that you doubt about the existence of inherent existence, you're not even sure if phenomena are of inherent existence or not. But the simple fact that you doubt on the existence of phenomena as being inherent, at that moment you are already giving a punch in the face of ignorance. You are already giving a punch in the face of ignorance. You're not eliminating it, but already, ignorance, something is there. In the simple moment that you are actually doubting inherent existence. But it's not enough, ignorance is a tough guy. It's not something that you can just go there and give one punch. We need more. So, the main, let's say, problem, the main difficulty is that ignorance does not exist only in a gross level. It exists in a subtle and in a very subtle level in our mind also. So, when we go through the whole process of intellectually understanding emptiness and reflecting upon it and so on, all of this is very good and is necessary, but it's just the first step. In the moment that we understand that phenomena are relative and so on, beautiful, but we understood. Ignorance is not in our head, it's also in our head, but it's mostly, let's say, in our heart. Okay? It's something that is spontaneous. When we look at phenomena and they appear to us as being of inherent existence and we grasp them as being of inherent existence, it's not something that we do intellectually. Do we stop to think that things of inherent existence? No. And that's the most difficult thing. So, how do I eliminate ignorance in a more subtle level? By developing wisdom in a more subtle way. Okay? In Sutra, we talk about constructed ignorance, Denzin Kundak, and spontaneous ignorance, Denzin Henkye. Okay? So, we need to eliminate both of them. In Tantra, we talk about ignorance in a gross level, subtle level, and very subtle level. So, the whole process is that of first generating wisdom, which means the wisdom that realizes the lack of inherent existence, in a conceptual way, in a gross way. Later, we need to bring that same experience, that same understanding, into a subtle level of consciousness. Because it's just by generating wisdom in a subtle level of consciousness that I can oppose directly ignorance in the subtle level. Okay? That's why in Tantra, very often we talk about the union of great bliss and emptiness. Here, very in a simple way, what's the meaning of the union of great bliss and emptiness? Great bliss is a subtle state of consciousness that realizes emptiness. That's what's called the union of great bliss and emptiness. The object of perception is emptiness. The object perceiver is great bliss. So it means I use great bliss as a means to bring my mind to a subtle level of consciousness. And within that level, I realize wisdom. I realize emptiness. And in this way, I am opposing my ignorance in a very subtle level. It's like, at whatever level I generate wisdom, I am blocking wisdom. At whatever level I generate wisdom, I am blocking ignorance at that same level. So when I generate in a gross level, I block ignorance in a gross level. When I generate in a subtle level, I block ignorance in a subtle level. When I generate wisdom in a very subtle level, I block ignorance in a very subtle level. Okay? So ignorance in the gross level has very much to do with conceptual understanding and the way how we perceive the world normally. In a subtle level is more emotional, let's say. It's the aspects that come spontaneously to our mind, without ever even thinking about it. And the very subtle level are the imprints of that mind. Whatever is in the very subtle mind manifests in the subtle mind. Whatever is in the subtle mind manifests in the gross mind. Okay? So the methods that we have in Tantra, which are called the completion stage and so on, are actually to bring us to a very subtle level of consciousness that realizes emptiness, so that we can block ignorance at a very subtle level of consciousness. Okay? So this is in very few words the method that we have. This is very few words one of the path that we need to follow. Once we understood the lack of inherent existence, once we understood all phenomena lack inherent existence, wonderful, all phenomena are interdependent, Here we live in a conventional reality that is actually conventional. Wow! Once we understood that, we need to familiarize ourselves so deeply that we experience it in a non-conceptual way. We experience it in everything that we touch. We experience it in everything that we smell, that we look, that we listen. Okay? This process happens through what is called the 5 path. So the first one is called the path, very briefly now, the first one is called the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation is when we generate the right motivation to wish to reach enlightenment or to get out of samsara. At that point, we have a conceptual understanding of emptiness. Then we generate really good concentration and perfect meditation, which we call shamatha, which is the ability to meditate single-pointed without losing concentration. And by meditating single-pointed on the object, it brings us bliss to the body and to the mind. This is called shamatha. Then from that, we take a part of our mind and we start to analyze the same object. Okay? This is called vipassana, bhakton, profound view. Okay? So when we are able to develop the profound view, or bhakton, or vipassana, in relation to emptiness, this we enter into what is called the path of preparation. By remaining in that state of meditation for a long time, we gradually create so much familiarity with emptiness, which now is still conceptual. Because we are still realizing emptiness through a mental image. It's still a concept somehow. As we go through it and we familiarize ourselves with that concept so much, that arrives a moment in which we have a direct experience of it. We can perceive, we can feel emptiness in a non-conceptual way. Okay? It's a moment in which our mind, it's completely in union with the actual lack of inherent existence, without no more, oh, I am here, emptiness is there, I am perceiving this. It becomes one only thing. Until that moment, what happens is that I'm here and I'm observing and reflecting upon emptiness. At that moment, there is no more this distinction. And this is when we realize emptiness and we enter into the path of seeing, and technically is when we get out of samsara. Okay? So, after this, we enter into the path of meditation. When we get out of the path of seeing, what happens is that it's like the experience of emptiness has been so strong that when we get out of the meditative state, you look at everything around you, we experience all phenomena, they continue to appear to us as if they were of inherent existence, but we know it's not like that. It's like more or less, let's say we are in a theater looking to a movie, and we really believe that the actors are real people. But actually it's just a projection. Okay? And for a long time we believed in it like this. Then someone starts saying to us, look, that's just an image. There is no real people there. And we say, come on, that cannot be true. And then slowly we will start getting more near and more near and more near. Suddenly we were able to go behind and to look that it was just a screen. And then when we get back to the seat, it still appears to us as being real people because we were so much used to it. But we say, oh, but I know it's not. It looks like real people, but I know it's not. This is what happened when someone reaches the state of the path of seeing, after the path of seeing, which is we call in Tibetan Detong Gyuma Tabu, which means the emptiness like an illusion. Everything looks like an illusion, which means phenomena appear to us as being of inherent existence, but we know that it's not like that. At that point, we enter in what is called the path of meditation. The path of meditation is a long process because it's 2/3 of the path. Okay, 1/3 is until the path of seeing. Then we have another 2/3, which is to eliminate the imprints of ignorance, which is to eliminate the appearance of phenomena as being of inherent existence. When we are able to eliminate such imprints, and then we have no more grasping at inherent existence, but also no more appearance of inherent existence, this is the so-called the path of no more learning or Buddhahood. Okay. Enlightenment is the moment in which the practitioner, the person, the sentient being, goes beyond not only the grasping at inherent existence, but also the appearance. It's the moment in which relative truth and absolute truth are just the same. There is no more distinction. And it's not conceptual. It's a direct experience. Everything that is there, it's naturally conventional, it's naturally interdependent, and it's naturally lacking inherent existence. Okay? So, what's one of the definitions of the point of reaching enlightenment? When the sentient being becomes able to realize simultaneously relative and absolute truth as being one. Which means, at the same time, whenever I look at anything, it appears to me, I look at a glass, it appears as a glass, but at the same time, I know that it lacks inherent existence. I see, I feel, through my whole self, the interdependence of it. It does not appear anymore to me as if existing inherently out of its own characteristics. And as a result of that, the mind expands in an infinite way. There is no more limits in this matter. There is great love, compassion, wisdom, generosity, and so on. Okay? So when we talk about a Buddha, we are not talking about a God. We're not talking about something that is completely unrelated with us. The Buddha is someone that's just similar to us, just like us, but that was able to go completely beyond, to transcend completely his own ignorance and the imprints of ignorance, which the name technically is Nyöntrip and Shettrip. Nyöntrip is called the obscuration of mental defilements, Shettrip, the obscuration of knowledge, or the obscuration to omniscience. The obscuration of mental defilements, Nyöntrip, and the obscuration to omniscience, Shettrip. The obscuration of mental defilement is basically the grasping at inherent existence and all its derivatives, like anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, and so on. It's all part of the obscuration of mental defilements. But the root of the obscuration of mental defilements is the grasping at inherent existence. While the obscuration to omniscience is the appearance of inherent existence or the imprints of ignorance. Okay? When we are able to eliminate both, we reach Buddhahood. Okay? Okay. We have the two types of obstructions, which is called the obstruction of mental defilements, which is called Nyöntrip, and the obstruction to omniscience, or the obstruction of knowledge, which is called Shettrip. The first one, the obstruction of mental defilements, is ignorance, which means the grasping at inherent existence, and all the other mental defilements such as anger, attachment, pride, miserliness, and so on. While the obstruction to omniscience or the obstruction to knowledge is basically the imprints of ignorance, or, in other words, the appearance of inherent existence. Okay? So, when we talk about Buddhahood, what is Buddhahood? You know, it means to develop our nature to its most pure state. So, what is our pure nature? You know, many of us very often we talk about, we all have a pure nature. But what is this pure nature? Sometimes people may ask me, if we are actually nature pure, we all have Buddha nature, does this mean that one day we were a Buddha and suddenly we stopped being one? Does this mean that we one day were completely pure and suddenly now I'm not anymore? If it was like that, we really have a big problem. Huh? Because if the answer is yes, one day we were totally pure and now we are not anymore, my first question would be, why? Or someone made me not to be any more pure, and who am I to blame? Or, I was time up, time finished, expiry date. So, if the first point is yes, you are not anymore pure because someone chose that you would not be any more pure, then it's completely pointless to do anything to get out of suffering, because it does not depend on me. If it's because I was pure and then suddenly something happened and I stopped being pure, or I was not really pure, or it means there is an expiry date. And then what's the point of putting so much effort into it? But the good news is that the actual answer that Buddha gave us is that you were never pure. Oh, me too. We were never pure. So if I was never pure, what's the point saying that I have a pure nature? What is my pure nature? Sangye Girik, my Buddha nature, is the emptiness of my mind. Is the fact that I am interdependent. What's the true nature of Buddha's mind? The ultimate nature of Buddha's mind? It lacks inherent existence. What's the ultimate nature of my mind? It lacks inherent existence. My mind and Buddha mind have the same nature. Both of them lack inherent existence. Okay? What does this mean? It means that yes, I am not pure, I have never been pure, but I can become. How? By using the interdependence in a positive way. That's the main thing. It's possible by gradually creating the right causes and the right conditions and then gradually to change our mind. Because we do not exist as an ignorant, miserable, coward being by inherent existence. We are not inherently miserable. We are not inherently ignorant. We are not inherently cowards. We are all of this because we live in a negative interdependence. But if we generate a positive interdependence, then we can change all of that. Does it take time? Buddha talked about 3 eons. Okay? So no hurry. But it's possible. We need many lives. Yes, true. Yes, in Tantra we say you can live rich enlightenment in one lifetime in Tantra. Okay, let's hope for everyone. But don't worry if it takes few lifetimes, okay? Don't need, I'm going to give up too many lives. No. Anyhow, we need to live our lives. Better to live 100 lives going to the right direction than live 100 lives going to the wrong direction. No? It takes time. Why it takes time? Because we need to change our very subtle mind. And what's the method of Tantra? To make it quickly? Is to access our very subtle mind within the state, with the mind that realizes emptiness. That's mainly the main method that we have in Tantra to make things quickly. It's like a shortcut. We stop with all these conventional thoughts and stupid ideas and blah, 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 and we go directly to the most deep states of our own consciousness. And within that deeper state of consciousness, we realize the true nature of our mind, which is emptiness. That's the method that is within Tantra. Okay? That's why we say it's possible to reach enlightenment in one lifetime. Otherwise, it takes time. But it's okay that it takes time. Because we need to use the time that we have in a positive way. It doesn't matter if it takes 1 life, 2 lives, 5 lives, 10 lives, 100 lives. We need to go gradually in the right direction. Okay? But the most important thing for us to understand here, I would say, is that it's possible. Why? Because our mind is not inherent existent. Our mind is interdependent. We can make changes. It's possible to eliminate ignorance. And this is one of the most important points that we need to get to. So we understand that a Buddha is not something completely disconnected from my reality. To become a Buddha is to continue to be ourselves, but completely different. Free from all defilements such as anger, jealousy, pride, whatever. Free completely from our own ignorance, basically. Okay? So this is, let's say, what we mean by reaching Buddhahood. What we mean by the pure nature of our mind. That we can reach that state. Okay? I know that we would all love to reach enlightenment today. And have a pill that we buy these pills, Or we go to some sort of initiation and then we get something on our head and something happens, okay? But I'm sorry to say it's not like that. Okay? There is a process, but luckily in some ways not like that, which means there is a process which will make things possible, you know. If enlightenment would depend on someone hitting our head with a stick, or a vase, or whatever, I would not like so much the idea, in the sense. Then it does not depend on me. If the person doesn't want to hit my head with a stick, what do I do then? Instead, I have the freedom to choose, to change my mind, to change my attitude, and gradually to do that. Okay? But now, this is for us to understand. Can you see the connection between understanding conventional truth and understanding why it's possible to reach enlightenment and what do we mean by enlightenment? Okay? It's important just for us to get this. So when we say, okay, Buddha, I take refuge in the Buddha. Who is Buddha? Buddha is someone that was able to overcome completely his own ignorance and the imprints of his own ignorance. And he has the path to show me how to do the same. That's Buddha. When I take refuge in the Buddha that one day I will become, I'm taking refuge in my own potential of eliminating my ignorance, and by that becoming a real Buddha. So this is important for us to understand what we mean by that. Then now the process to reach there, it's a long way. Yes. But it's not impossible. Even if you just want to get out of samsara, okay, you still need to realize emptiness. That's 1/3. On a very subtle level. Okay? And that's still, how to say, because you need to have a direct experience. It's not conceptual. It needs to be something true. It's something that it's there in every moment. It's in every atom of our body somehow, in every aspect of the mind. That's where we need to get to. Okay? But there is a whole process to do that, which is possible. Okay? And the process of doing that, we need basically 2 sides we will go, which is method and wisdom. We need wisdom that is reflecting upon emptiness, meditating on emptiness. And then we need a method, which is accumulation of merit, purification of our negativities. If we do not have enough merits, we will never realize emptiness. We can reflect conceptually about it 100,000s of times. If we do not have enough merits, we will never realize emptiness. Okay? There is a whole logical reasoning why for that, but I'm not going to enter into that right now. It's the fact that we cannot experience what we have not created the causes to experience. And once we realize emptiness, there is no more suffering and there is so much joy. So if I have not created the causes to sustain such state of consciousness and joy, I'm not going to be able to do it. So in order to generate that, we need to accumulate merits. We need to do positive actions. We need to generate joy. We need to do so much in order to be able to sustain that state of mind also. Okay? So that's why we always go method and wisdom. We need to go through these 2 paths together. Inside of method, there is generation of generosity, there is morality, there is patience, there is effort, there is so many accumulation of merit, purification of negativities. All of this is necessary. If we are in the path and we see there is a moment that intellectually we understand everything, but we do not move on, it means we need to accumulate more merits. We need to purify our negativities. Lama Chöpa, when he was meditating on his path, he had all the intellectual understanding, but still he couldn't get there. He couldn't get the actual experience. And he had, his guru was directly Buddha Manjushri. He was talking to Manjushri. And then Manjushri said to him, you need to accumulate merits and you need to purify. So he went for more than a year to one cave where he was doing 1,000,000-something prostrations and so many mandala offerings and so on, until one day where he actually had true realization. But it came through a process of purification. He already had the logical understanding, but it was all in the head. and he could feel it, and he had a beautiful feeling with it, but it was not like really realizing it. So in order to do that, he did a long process of purification and meditation and accumulation of merits. So we also need to do that. So it's not just a matter of understanding. That's why we do sock offering, that's why we do karma yoga, that's why we need to accumulate positive energy and need to make practice of purification also together. It goes together to sustain the other path. How to purify our negativities, that's a whole subject. We will see it, not today. Actually, there is one of the next teachings here, which I don't remember, is one weekend, which this weekend is only about how to purify negativities. Okay? It's the explanation and practice according to Sutra and Tantra. But basically, you purify negativities by generating a directly opposite attitude to the negative action you had. This is the basic aspect, okay? So, this is basically, let's say, the path is divided into method and into wisdom. Wisdom is understanding. It's realizing the true nature of things. Method is accumulating merit, purifying our negativities, developing love, developing compassion, developing generosity. All of this is very important. And together with that, we need also to generate wisdom. And with these two together, it's like two wings that we can build up to fly. Okay? But in order to generate the right motivation, to understand what is enlightenment, we must have some understanding about reality. Otherwise, we cannot understand how can I reach enlightenment. Okay? Okay. So we will just go to the reading of the text. Actually, the most important parts of the meaning of this we have already seen. So we'll just go through the reading of it. And it says, in the Madhyamika school, there is ultimate truth and conventional truth. With respect of the first, the Madhyamika Svatantrika asserts the following divisions. 1, an ultimate object, and 2, an ultimate awareness. The first of this, again, has two aspects, the real ultimate object and a similar ultimate object. An example of the first is like the emptiness of a vase being truly existent. An example of the second is the gathering of the vase and the known true existence of the vase. Which means, according to the Madhyamika Svatantrika, the ultimate truth is divided into two, which is the actual ultimate truth and the similar ultimate truth. Which in very simple words it is the actual ultimate truth, which is emptiness, and the similar ultimate truth that is the mental image of emptiness. Okay? Then the ultimate awareness has also two aspects, which are called an ultimate awareness that is not nominally listed and a nominally listed ultimate awareness. Basically, the ultimate awareness that is not nominally listed is the direct experience, non-conceptual direct experience of emptiness. While the one that is nominally listed, basically, is the one that is listed but is not an actual realization of emptiness. It's the conceptual realization of emptiness. Named means named, but named means that it is named but is not an actual thing. It's like you are named as my son, but actually you are not my son. You are identified in the way, but you are not the actual thing. Okay? In Tibetan we call namdrangi goneyewa. The first case would be the equally placed exalted wisdom of an Arya, which is the direct experience, the realization of emptiness, non-conceptually. Because in the perspective of that exalted wisdom, both the elaboration, that is the object of negation, of the sign, and the elaboration, that is the dualistic appearance, have been cut off. An inferential cognition, which means a conceptual realization of emptiness, of the known true existence of a vase, is an example of a nominally listed ultimate awareness. Because in the perspective of that inferential cognition only the elaboration, that is the negation of the sign, is cut, but not the elaboration that is the dualistic appearance. In other words, conceptually, you haven't really realized emptiness, but not directly. The Madhyamika Prasangika school. The emptiness of the established, the emptiness of that established by its own character, or the emptiness of true existence is an ultimate truth. In other words, the lack of inherent existence is what we call ultimate truth. Okay? In both the Madhyamika Svautantrika school and the Madhyamika Prasangika school, there does not exist a truly existent phenomenon, yet there is true existence. There is nothing that exists truly as it appears, which means there is nothing that exists truly as being of inherent existence, but existence truly exists. But reality truly exists. Okay? So, it says, there does not exist a truly existent phenomenon, yet there is true existence. For instance, the emptiness of true existence is truth. It is a known fallacious, its mode of appearance and its mode of abidance are consistent. Its mode of appearance and its mode of abidance are consistent with respect to the awareness which takes it as an appearing object, yet one has to analyze the following qualm. If somebody said, the emptiness of true existence of a subject, it follows that it exists truly because it is a truth. Response. There is no fault because when analyzing if the vase is true or not, the vase being empty of true existence is found. Also, when analyzing if the emptiness of true existence is true or not, it is found to be empty of true existence as well. Hence, investigate what it means by that not found when analyzing. Think about it. Which means, basically, when you take any object and you analyze, does it truly exist? What is the result that you get after analyzing? It exists, but not inherently. Okay? There are 16 divisions of ultimate truth, such as inner emptiness. Basically, emptiness is always one, but there is the explanation, like the division Buddha explained, 16 types of emptiness, which is the inner emptiness, outer emptiness, the emptiness of the self, the emptiness of objects, and like this we could go on and on. Which would say, okay, in the table I have 8 emptiness. There is the emptiness of the cup, the emptiness of the flower, the emptiness of the bowl, and like this we go on. Finally, the emptiness are always the same as emptiness, but the object of emptiness is different. In the path to realize emptiness, we need to realize emptiness in relation to different objects. That's why these divisions are made. And when we sum it, there are two, the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of phenomena, which means the lack of inherent existence of the self and the lack of inherent existence of everything else. Okay? Which are two things that we need to realize. They're the same. They're always the lack of inherent existence, but on the path we need to realize the one of the self and the one of phenomena. The conventional truth in Madhyamika Svautantrika school is divided into two. The real conventional truth and the unreal conventional truth, as taught in the Gaya Garva of Two Truth. We talked about this morning already. They are identical in their appearance, but due to whether they can or cannot perform a function, they are conventionally divided into real and unreal. Hence, a real conventional truth is that which is able to perform a function just as it appears. Unreal conventional truth is that which is not able to perform a function while being a conventional truth. Examples are respectively the form of our face and the reflection of our face in a mirror. This division and example are posited here from the point of view of the Svautantrika Madhyamika Svatantrika. In the Yogacara Madhyamika Svautantrika, it would be slightly different. This is just the names of some of the philosophical schools. In the Madhyamika Prasangika, which is the highest school, the distinction between real and unreal is posited with respect to the perspective of worldly knowledge. However, in our own Madhyamika Prasangika system, the conventional truth is not divided into real and unreal,
because in our own Madhyamika system, the form and the reflection, the form of the face and the reflection of the face in a mirror do not have difference of being real or other than being unreal. Before gaining the view of the middle way, one would not be able to realize the collection of the two, the way they both abide and the way they are both empty. Which means, in order to understand how phenomena exist, we must understand how they are also lacking inherent existence. When saying from the perspective of worldly knowledge, there are many who now consider it as a conventional valid cognizer, which is a big mistake. Therefore, one has to understand it as in the perspective of ordinary worldly knowledge. Okay, what do we mean by that, basically? In the Madhyamika Prasangika school, they say that conventional truth, until you have not realized it to be conventional, it's always unreal. Why? Because we see it as absolute. Until the moment that you see everything that is conventional as absolute, it's unreal. As long as you see the conventional reality as being absolute, it is unreal. In the moment that you realize that conventional reality is conventional, it's true, it's real. Okay? That's the main point. Now, I thought that 2 days would be quite enough to look at the subject, but I see that we need at least 4 to be able really to see it well. But I like to conclude with one special verse, okay? And one conclusion. So, to conclude, I like just to say this verse and make a short conclusion, which is the first words that Buddha said after reaching enlightenment, which in Tibetan are profound and peaceful, as clear light, free of elaborations and non-composed. Such a nectar I have found, I have realized. To whoever I explain it will not be able to understand, so I stay by myself in the forest meditating. Okay? What it means by profound? It is the ultimate nature of all phenomena. It's peaceful because it pacifies all suffering, and it's free of all conflicts. It is of clear light because the ultimate nature of our mind is called clear light, the very subtle aspect of the mind. There is different interpretations of the word clear light here, but to make one way, it's the true nature of our mind. It is non-composed because, and free of elaborations. It's non-composed because it's permanent. It's not depending on causes and conditions. It's a permanent phenomenon. The emptiness of yesterday is not the same of the emptiness. It's the same of the emptiness of today. It haven't changed, you know. It's not that we have all this new century modern emptiness and the past century the emptiness was different, you know. Emptiness is always emptiness. It doesn't matter how long it passes. So it's permanent. And it's not elaborated because you don't have the big emptiness, the small emptiness, the nice emptiness, the ugly emptiness, and like this you go. Emptiness is emptiness. Okay? So it's profound, peaceful, as clear light, non-composed and non-elaborated. Such a nectar is something that eliminates suffering. Such a nectar I have found, I have realized. Buddha is not saying I have understood. Buddha said, I have realized, I have found. To whoever I explained will not be able to understand it, which means it's not a conceptual thing. No? Manjushri had to say to Lama Chöpa, go to the cave to meditate, to accumulate merit and purify. It was not enough to explain something to him. So emptiness is not something conceptual. It's like, imagine that you need to explain to someone what is the experience of eating chocolate ice cream, but a person have never eaten ice cream and doesn't know what is chocolate, and maybe lives in a total tropical country where have never experienced cold. Oh, you know, it's something cold. What is cold? It's sweet with that strange taste of cold. You cannot get it. Or you know, even like, you can do something similar like Amdo Gendun Chöpa, which was a great scholar of Tibet in the beginning of, to like in the end of the 1800s. And he went to India, and when he came back in his diary, he was describing to Tibetans what was to eat a mango. Saying the mango is this fruit, more or less of this size, yellow in color, blah, blah, blah. And you're saying the taste is similar to the taste of fresh yogurt with a lot of with a lot of sugar. But you cannot know what is a mango by that, But he tried in his best way to get near to it, but you cannot have the experience of a mango if you have never eaten one. Similar to that, you cannot understand what is emptiness if you do not taste it. You can have the whole technical knowledge, but you will not know what it is until you don't taste it. So Buddha said, I cannot explain to anyone because they would not understand it, which means it's not a conceptual. What Buddha did later, he was helping us to induce us into a process so that we can generate that inner state, which is possible. And when Buddha said, I will remain by myself in the forest, means I'm not going to force anyone on any path. If people want my teachings, they request and I will give. And that's what he did. Okay? So the point is that from all that we have seen, first of all, it's so beautiful that we can have some understanding of the first words that Buddha said. Some understanding of what it means by emptiness. It's not an abstract concept anymore. And to understand emptiness from the perspective of reality, that's very important. The emptiness is the lack of inherent existence, which goes together with relative reality, conventional reality. Things do exist, but don't exist in the way how they appear, which means in an inherently existing way. So, for me, the most important thing that I want to pass today, that I want you to get, is that it's possible to reach enlightenment. We can do it. Why? Because we have the same nature as the mind of a Buddha. Because our mind is interdependent. And it's so important for us to believe in ourselves. The only reason why Buddha Shakyamuni gave all the teachings that he gave, why Lama Tsongkhapa gave all the teachings that he gave, why Lama Ganchen is here giving all the teachings, taking care of us, and doing all of this, not to say all the other masters that were in between there. The only reason why all of them did that is because they believe in each and every one of us that we can do it. The only reason why Buddha taught is because Buddha believed in us. The only reason why Lama Tsongkhapa, why our gurus, why they taught everything they taught, why they teach everything they teach, why they guide us with so much love and compassion, is because they do believe in us. Why? Because they know that our mind lacks inherent existence. They know that we are interdependent, so they know that we can make a difference, that we can change our mind. So it's a matter now of us believing in ourselves. Why they believe in us? Because they believe in themselves. And they know that the nature of our mind and the nature of their mind is the same. Why Lama Ganchen come here is teaching self-healing, putting things in his head and everything, trying all the different methods to help us and to guide us in all thousands of different ways and makes the center and all of this. Why? Because he believes in us. Because he believes in himself. So we need to believe in ourselves. If the Buddha believes in us, why can't I believe in myself? It's possible. And this is something very, very important for us to get. Okay. So, the way of the teachings, the way of the whole philosophy, the meditation, the Tantra, all of this is based on the trust that Buddha has in us, that our Guru has in us. And we need to follow that trust and to trust ourselves. Okay? And to trust that, what do we need? To understand reality a little bit. To see that we are interdependent so we can change something in ourselves. And that's the most beautiful thing that we can see somehow. Okay? So remember, it's a gradual path. It will take some time. But as long as we move in the right direction, everything is fine. Okay? Sure, if we think in the perspective only of this life, but if I go to the next life, I have a relationship, that's too late. It's not. Actually, it's not. So, the most important thing I want to conclude is, please, we must believe in ourselves. When I first started to study more Buddhism, the way how emptiness was always taught to me which was not specifically to me, was the whole way how generally it was taught. It's like something, oh, emptiness, forget about it. It's very important, but too difficult. It's always been like this. In many, many contexts, not only in the monasteries, but traditionally, very often it's like this. I personally think it's a little bit different. It's not easy to realize, but especially if it's difficult, that's why we need to still to go on the same place again and again and again, But it's possible. I believe that everyone that is here can understand it. It's just a matter of knowing the right way how to explain. And knowing how to get there. And slowly, slowly we can do it. So I believe all we need is to believe in ourselves also. And gradually we get there. Okay. So as I said before, finally it's quite late. 2 days, I thought 2 days were enough, but actually we need at least 4. But we have other opportunities to go again and again through it. Okay? So we just conclude doing our final dedications. Tena Jetsun Lama Toje Chen Korde Ranshin Du Tsame Badang Gyundre Tendrel Loa Mepa Niludro Pensu Galmetrosu Charwai Ludru Gantam Topar Jingi Lo Ludru Gantam Topar Jingi Lo Yanda Tawa Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyurchi Kepa Nyampar Me Payang Kongne Konto Pelwarisho. May the precious correct view of reality, which has not yet born, arise and grow, which has born have no decline and increase forevermore. Jitsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar trinle chochur gepadang losan tempe drume sasumge drove musel tato ne gyurchi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin Nintsen takto delekpe koncho sumke jing koncho sumge tashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of